Hello, and welcome to my Fire Emblem 9 Path of Radiance 100% growth slow turn count playthrough. I'm your host Typhoon Carter, and today I'm joined by Meta, who will be co-commentating Chapter 17-3 with me.
Hello.
So 17-3, it's another really long defend map, and it's the shortest, or rather the last defend map of the game.
A really boring chapter playing casually, but I'm sure it's more interesting in a playthrough like this.
Yeah, so we're not going to be routing all the enemies right away because unlike chapter 13, there is no way to make the chapter end faster. So we'll be sitting around here a lot doing some staff grinding, particularly for Soren and Mist.
It's also a chance to get some combat EXP for units like Jill, to reduce the amount of bonus EXP they'll need later.
Yeah, Jill will need to be ready to promote by chapter 18, so any experience she can get here is ideal, given that only one unit is really going to be doing extended amounts of combat for 17-4. Now, 17-3, much like the other parts of chapter 17, there are swamp terrain that will slow our units down, and you'll notice it as there's brown patches. This is mostly a non-issue given we still have enough room to kind of move around in this map.
Additionally, there are some enemies with poison weapons that are going to be key in the staff spamming by poisoning units to help get them healed.
Yeah, and this also allows us to put the restore staff to use a little bit, as restore staff, despite giving the same amount of weapon EXP as mend and heal, it allows us to basically gain more base experience. And here Mist got hit by that myrmidon who has a poison weapon. Now if he had hit both times, Mist would have died from the residual poison damage. But she was able to dodge one because venom weapons are still kind of inaccurate, but not as inaccurate as their GBA incarnations. And the other thing to note about chapter 17-3 is that this is the only part out of the 4 parts of chapter 17 where we're able to actually put the reinforce command into any semblance of use.
This is because they tend to take a while to show up on the other maps.
Yeah, they'll take a couple turns to show up, and also because we generally just clear the maps too fast for them to be able to show up. And here, Soren, as shown here, he can't quite use the restore staff until we make this mend heal, which is just enough to put him over to C rank Staves, and he also gets a level up.
Thanks to these increased growths, Soren has already capped his strength.
Yeah, which is very depressing, because knives are still a very shitty weapon, which is the only other way you can really put that strength to use that is not attack speed related.
Well, being able to use siege tomes without getting slowed down is a pretty nice thing.
Yeah, and siege tomes are surprisingly not as heavy in this game compared to other iterations. Although I guess this was Intelligent Systems' way of trying to show off the strength as a replacement for Constitution for attack speed.
Yeah, but I don't know why that means they couldn't have 20-weight bolting still.
They probably still want to make it feasible for the player to be able to wield it without any penalty.
Yeah, but tell that to FE7 and 8.
Yeah, although when you think about it, in a normal playthrough, units like Soren and Ileana only have 5 or 10% strength growth, so, normally it's not realistic for them to reach those thresholds.
Yeah.
Since you're asking Soren to get like at least 8 like strength procs or so.
Off his 0 base, 5% growth. He'll get there, I swear.
Yeah. Energy drop Soren. New meme.
I've done it before, but that was only because I didn't really need it on anyone else.
Oh. Man, that's hilarious. But yeah. Anyways, I was checking like how long the poison would last so that I can basically milk any like residual damage that she takes. Since like poison, unlike Thracia, and more akin to FE7, 6, and like 8, they last like much longer. Wait a minute, FE6 doesn't have poison weapons, but needless to say, but my point still stands that like the poison isn't like permanent, so you know it's a good way to milk some staff healing.
Yes.
And as many times as I have joked throughout this playthrough, IS really wanted to show off the capabilities of the GameCube's engine when it comes to being able to show off these animations, to a point where they wouldn't let us like just skip through the animations even without maps on.
They're just so proud of the work, don't judge it.
Yeah, to a point where they have our playable units have unique models, where randomizers, the units would look very weird, needless to say.
Yeah. Here, Marsha's Red's development shows that not even a promoted Sage can damage her.
Yeah, although I'm not sure if that's more of a testament to magic tomes having extremely low might for whatever reason in this game. And well, Tellius in general. Finally Boyd and Oscar show up. Although that they're only really there because I couldn't really think of anybody better to bring on board, as Boyd's EXP actually didn't really matter at this point. Although Oscar's sort of does.
Kieran's already been promoted, and are there places where two promoted paladins will be helpful later?
It's more so for filler stuff, like at that point. Although, like, if I were to promote Oscar, he'd still have like better stats than some of the later joining pre-promotes, so like he does have that going for him.
Yeah.
And that Sage drops an Elfar, but it doesn't really mean a whole lot. In like, besides like killing beastly goose, but we have other means for later in the playthrough when we do have to face them. And really, I'm just showing just how depressing this map really is when you decide. And this is again why I think IS should stop making defend maps ever again. Unfortunately, they make a couple more of these in the series.
Well, luckily there's some engaging ones like Conquest Chapter 10.
Yeah, that is true, but that's like a broken clock being right twice per day.
Yeah, it can't be counted on to be repeated.
Yeah, it's asking too much out of IS.
Frankly, though, I don't think I have much hope for future FE's games maps after Three Houses.
Yeah, at least Project Triangle Strategy looks like a fun game, which is probably still the closest thing besides Dark Deity that we're ever getting to a new FE game as of right now.
That is what it looks like, yeah.
And Dark Deity is rushed and looks very depressing at times. But
here,
yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, here, thankfully, Ike, despite his lowered attack speed, was about to murder that mage.
Yeah.
with Inui, the best sword.
Yeah. Anyways, gas stations don't exist in Telia, so I think we're good there. This is also one of the rare times where the fire magic being effective against Beast Lagoos works in our favor, as Marrum is able to at least take some damage. And we also have these longbows, which would have actually done 0 damage to Marcia because that's how depressing bows are in this game, unless they're ballista.
It is a wacky feeling when seeing fires actually get damaged by ballista, unlike the bows that always pink them.
Yeah, although this partly has to do with the fact that ballistas actually pack a lot of might and they're independent of the user's strength, so they're kind of like crossbows in that regard.
They're crossbows, but in a game with 2 times effectiveness, so they don't instantly delete your flyers.
Yeah, but you also have to remember that they pack like 28 might or so.
Yeah.
It sounds cool. It's one of those. It's a lot like enemy generals where they're annoying in the enemy's hands, but in a player's hands, it isn't really that good.
Yeah.
Although I do think crossbows could totally work and should totally make a return.
They were a fun mechanic in FE10, even if it was mostly in the enemy's hands that they were relevant. Oh my god.
Yeah. And they're actually, in Berwick Saga, they are actually a pretty fun weapon type to use.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Are they similar to how they are in FE10?
They are. Well, okay, the one property they do share is that they don't account for the user's strength at all. But like in Berwick Saga, like stats are just really low across the board, and like gross, besides like weapon rank gross, are like basically non-existent. And so the way like bows and crossbows work in like Berwick Saga is that you basically would select like the bow or the crossbow you're using. Those have a base might, but you'd also choose the type of arrow that you would use to go with it. So like these can have varying effects. For example, like you could pick like the Raijin arrow with like, let's say a Chunoku or whatever. And like Raijin arrows would basically deal like lightning damage to like the enemy. So they would use their res against them as part of the damage calculation. But they'd also still account for the strength of the crossbow while doing damage. So it can be very fun.
Yeah. The idea of a damage type targeting the opposite defense type in Fire Emblem is nothing we've seen, but it'd be interesting to be implemented.
Yeah, I think we see it in limited capacity in Heroes with like adaptive damage. Like it sort of works like that, but not quite. Since like dragon weapons in Heroes would basically target the lower of the enemy's defense or res when attacking.
Let's see, okay. I've never played Heroes, so I wouldn't know.
No, that's fair. Fair, although Heroes takes interesting liberties with certain units. Such as Faye using a bow in Echoes even though she can't use it normally.
They're just letting her realize her dream of being a bow knight.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think she's just an infantry archer in Heroes. Although IS is starting to run out of ideas for Echoes units, which is why Echoes fans have not been able to get too many banners. And why they're counting Pala and Katria as part of an SOV banner, which is depressing.
I mean, yeah, there are only so many characters to begin with, but it's still sad.
Oh yeah, and they're still putting Tellius characters on seasonals and not giving them new banners most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's become a classic to just show up for the first time in Heroes as a seasonal without even having a regular version of yourself.
Yeah, Tanith was in that spot for a very long time, until recently. And so was Charlotte.
And Deginsa.
Oh yeah, Deginsia. At least Deginsia's Halloween ult wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And I can't wait till they eventually get desperate and have to resort to making 2 base versions of Tellius characters for new Heroes banners. Although, funnily enough, they're at that point where they're slapping on OCs to try and like help the new Heroes banner sell more.
Yeah. But, you know, maybe I'll consider playing Heroes once they're at the point where people like Gareth are in it.
Oh jeez, yeah, considering how Heroes tends to treat their male units most of the time, I'd be hard-pressed if I were you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's okay, because now I still have an excuse to not play Heroes.
Oh my god. Anyway, so Jill hits level 17, she caps out her strength and speed. But the depressing reality of this game is that these enemies are so fat sometimes that, like, even if you're capping stats out, you're still struggling to kill.
This game is like the opposite of FE12. Enemies do no damage to you, and you do no damage to enemies.
You basically do so little. It's like depressing, like you're taking like several rounds just to kill them. Oh yeah, not to mention that some enemies also carry vulneraries on them and will just run away.
And they'll just spend an entire enemy phase trading it between them, all healing 10 HP each.
Yeah. Although some late game enemies actually have elixirs, so that actually can make things very frustrating. And they'll also retreat to like really weird spots that like don't even make any sense.
Yeah. And that's also one of the really annoying things about some bosses, is that like, if you try to player phase attack them, they just sit around healing.
Yeah, although we don't see that too often, luckily.
Yeah.
This
it can be planned around for sure.
It usually applies to like bosses that can actually move, which, well, there's only a handful that really can do that.
I mean, I'm thinking of a certain bolt axe wielding wyvern.
Yeah, who somehow got his own cipher card.
I mean, he just deserved it, okay? His tactics with throwing rocks at you are just too good. Can't ignore that.
Yeah. Even though that's not really what sold the chapter. It's what one of the generics be saying.
It's true.
Anyway, so here, once again, Jill is doing her usual thing of just self-improving and embracing the grind.
I mean, just gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
And here she managed to actually kill an enemy.
Yeah. Thankfully, these aren't the enemy types that you really gotta worry about. And more reinforcements show up where we basically sit there, camp, and basically, you know, just kill them.
That is what this chapter often devolves into.
Yeah.
Hunting down the reinforcements.
Yeah, and sitting there being bored out of your mind, wondering why the hell did they design this.
Yeah, I can say for sure it's definitely my least favorite chapter in the game. Only because it's the chapter I spend the most time on.
Oh really? Like even compared to chapters like Clash or like...
Well, Clash, at least I'm actually doing something to end the map earlier. Here I'm just sitting here, waiting for it to end.
No, that's fair. That's totally fair. But yeah, no, like these last like couple turns we're just trying to find targets to heal. More or less, and it's not the most interesting thing ever. And basically all the reinforcements at the end here stop showing up. Although it should be noted on Maniac that like this is probably one of the few chapters where like your weapon durability is at risk, where like the game like giving you advice about bringing lots of weapons can somewhat apply.
I think that advice can apply to a lot of Maniac.
Yeah. It's funny that I do wonder how much of their advice was really intended for Maniac, given that's what came out first.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, although it's much like Radiant Dawn's a forging conversation where they mention, oh, first one's like, doesn't really cost much, in direct reference to like how forging worked in Radiant Dawn.
Yeah, and also in the conversation about the silver card, which most players, when they play the international version, have no clue what Amy's talking about.
Yeah.
When she says, you can't sell your material as raw goods.
Yeah. Dialogue, like localization stuff like this, is always interesting, although nowadays we have to rely on heroes to clear up any localizing stuff.
Yeah, but the Heroes also has a tendency to ruin characters' names, though.
Yeah. Although this mostly applies to like the really old games.
Like FE4 and FE5.
Yeah, like Ulster's name being Skaflo.
Yeah, I miss Ulster. I want him back.
Yeah, and Project Exile unfortunately needing to rush updates to make these single changes.
That too. Poor guys.
Yeah, they got their work cut out for them. Again, more EXP for Jill. And Jill here, she hits level 18, so, you know, this reduces the amount of EXP she needs. And, unfortunately she won't be able to cap her magic out through leveling herself up to level 20.
Her dreams of using the Flame Lance are not at their full potential yet. And here Miss levels up to level 6 as we've been taking a real sweet time grinding her staff rank up. And just goes to show how fast you can really get her to reach B rank staves. Although thankfully Miss doesn't really need that B rank staves until like several chapters later. So any grinding with her at this point would basically be towards getting her promoted and reducing the amount of X needed. This map has taken so long that we've gotten to witness Left transform, detransform, and transform again. And here Soren frantically tries to find a target to get a last bit of staff EXP on.
Yeah, and he decides to just heal Oscar because he has 3 targets to choose from. And that is 17-3 cleared in 10 turns. I'll see you guys next time for 17-4. Bye bye.